Hey everybody, welcome to What a Week. Appreciate you checking in with us here. John Keller as usual. I'm back from vacation. I know Kate took good care of you last week, right?
Tanned, rested, and ready. Yeah, she did.
Good.
She did. We had a really good time, actually. You better not take too much more time off, Chris.
All right. I might lose my seat here. All right, let's jump right into this. So, impeachment inquiry. Basically, this is dominating all the political headlines right now.
Yeah.
Just what is on the surface level here, and then getting a little bit deeper. But what do you think about this as far as a strategy? I know it's not. The Democrats aren't saying it's a strategy. They're saying we have to do this. It's our job.
Listen, I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Impeachment is an inherently political process. Yes, there are constitutional mandates that many members feel moved by to act if they think there's unfitness for office present or a threat to our democratic principles. So I'm not discounting that. But the bottom line is, of course, there's a strategy, a political strategy on both sides. You can see it playing out. And what the big question is, whose political strategy is going to work better? The big problem right now for President Trump is that, surprisingly to many, since this story broke, what's it been, less than 2 weeks, really? The numbers on impeachment, in which and there's, Secretary Pompeo's now getting caught up in that. There's the session with the Ukrainian president. But the numbers on impeachment all throughout the Mueller investigation were very negative. The public saying, don't go there, we don't approve. All of a sudden they flipped, and they're trending in the opposite direction now. You're starting to see majorities saying, by all means, impeach. The numbers of people saying, if he's impeached, the Senate should convict him and remove him, which is something that people had been indicating they felt was anathema to remove a duly elected president. It has never happened before. So these are bad trends. Now, can they turn? I suppose they could. The president and his allies are certainly out flogging an interpretation of that. I'm seeing it in my hate mail, which discounts everything that's going on as just a Democratic plot. But if those numbers don't turn around and they continue in this trend, I think you start to wonder, do Republicans in the Senate, many of whom are facing tough re-election fights next year, do they continue to hang in there with them? That's what happened with Nixon. The political support collapsed after the public support collapsed. Next thing you know, he resigned.
All right, and so obviously there could be implications down the road if it plays. If the president can turn this around and. He's got his base, though. I think we've talked about this for a long time. He's got his base, but he has to expand that in order to get elected. Do you think that this impeachment process could play a positive role for him in his re-election?
There's no question this excites his base. I mean, as I say, I'm seeing it in my mail. The hardcore Trump supporters are outraged, and they're going to be even more outraged the further on this goes. They will race to the polls if he's still on the ballot in November of 2020 in order to avenge this disgraceful coup attempt, okay? So there's a political benefit there. And, as the facts continue to emerge, I would note that there are large amounts of voters, even in this polling that's turning negative on the president, who say we want to see the facts, quite rationally and reasonably. If the facts turn out not to support the kind of charges, or impeachment charges, then, it could backfire on the Democrats. But frankly, Chris, I have felt for some time that the Democrats' best hope in November of 2020 is for the election to be a referendum on the incumbent. Usually, when an incumbent is running for re-election, that's what it is. And to the extent that this keeps public attention focused for the next 2, 3, 4 months or more on negative information about the incumbent, I think ultimately it benefits them, but we'll see.
All right, we will wait and see.
Wait and see,
as always.
That's
Keep
our
checking
mantra.
in with us, right? Let's also talk about back here locally, the Senate race. Obviously, Joe Kennedy decided to run. So let's talk about his congressional seat. And we just saw a Deval Patrick aide throw his hat into the ring. So
Jesse Mermel.
Jesse, yes. Talk a little bit about the impacts of that, and I guess we'll talk a little bit about Deval Patrick's legacy here.
Well, it's been 5 years since he left office. And he didn't leave office on a high note. The last polling that was conducted on Governor Patrick during his final months in office indicated very mixed feelings about him as a governor and his performance in office. And then we had Snowmageddon, the winter of 2015, and the continuing meltdown of the MBTA, for which he and his administration have absorbed quite a bit of the blame. So here comes Patrick's former communications chief, who's going to be running, and she's not trying to hide her association with Governor Patrick. I'm sure she's quite proud of it, and voters will understand that. I'm fascinated to see how that plays. I may be missing something here, but I don't believe, I believe this may be the first high-profile race being run by someone who came out of the Patrick administration. And I think it'll be interesting. You know, do voters have short memories sometimes? Yes. And I hardly think this will be the predominant factor. But I would think some of her opponents in this race will want to make that a factor. One other quick thing about this. I know we got to wrap it up. The fact that there's going to be this hot multi-candidate race in the 4th District really helps Joe Kennedy in the Senate race, because in a Democratic primary, it's a turnout election. You can count on there being a lot of turnout on turf where he's a familiar and well-liked figure. So that's something Ed Markey is going to have to overcome.
All right. Wait and see. As
Wait and see.
With everything.
Wait and see. What do you need me for if you've got it now?
All right. Thanks so much for checking in with us this week. We'll see you next week. I'm sure we'll have a whole lot to talk about as well, because a lot happens in 7 days.
What a week.
All right, John, thank you very much, and thanks for checking in with us.